Kael's gaze was unwavering, fixed on the eerie blue-green glow of the bioluminescent algae that painted the shattered wreckage in ghostly hues. Around him, the remnants of the sunken vessel creaked and groaned as the toxic sea's pressure pushed against its fragile frame. The artifact lay secured in a reinforced crate nearby, its ancient metal humming faintly with latent power. His breath came slow and steady, though every muscle screamed in protest. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on his shoulders. The choice to stay behind, to become the bait that would lure the Warden's forces away from the crew's escape route. It was a sacrifice born not from recklessness, but from a hard-earned understanding of leadership. Kael knew that if the crew were to live, if Steelbone was to survive, someone had to hold the line. Deep within the bowels of the wreck, Myra's voice crackled through the cums. "Kael, are you sure about this? We can't do this without you." His voice was steady, laced with quiet conviction. "There's no other way. Get the artifact out. I'll keep them busy." The crew moved with practiced urgency. Joran adjusted the vessel's thrusters, his fingers dancing over worn controls, deciphering the ancient schematics that had guided them thus far. Lena's hands were gentle but sure as she patched up Grab's wounds, a deep gash across his shoulder from a recent skirmish with a mechanical beast. Her soothing words were a balm, steadying the nerves that threatened to unravel beneath the pressure. Outside, Kael set to work. He scavenged from the wreck's scattered debris, wires, scrap metal, volatile fuel cells, fashioning crude but effective explosive traps and noisemakers designed to confuse and fragment the enemy's advance. Each placement was deliberate, every spark of ignition a calculated risk. Sweat mingled with grime as he toiled, the faint hum of the artifact a reminder of what was at stake. As the first of the mechanical beasts rounded the corner, their glowing red lenses piercing the murky water, Kael's heart pounded fiercely. The beast's metallic limbs clanked against rusted hulls, their movements a chilling blend of precision and relentless aggression. With a deep breath, Kael triggered the first trap, the explosion rippling through the water like a thunderclap, scattering the beasts and buying precious moments. Back on the vessel, Myra's eyes never left the monitors, tracking Kael's progress through the flickering feed. Her fiery red hair clung damply to her forehead, but her green eyes burned with fierce determination. "We're almost clear," she announced, voice tight but resolute. Joran nodded, fingers flying over controls as the vessel surged forward, breaking free from the wreck's grasp. Lena's gaze flicked toward the viewport, catching a glimpse of Kael's silhouette, a lone figure standing steadfast against the advancing horde. Tears welled unbidden, mixing with the salt spray on her cheeks. She swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. "Come back to us, Kael." The wreck trembled violently as Kael set off the final series of charges. The explosions illuminated the dark waters in jagged bursts of orange and white, sending shockwaves that scattered the mechanical beasts in disarray. The wreck began to collapse, a tumbling cascade of twisted metal and shattered glass. Kael's last sight was the fading outline of the cruise vessel as it slipped beyond the horizon of the toxic sea, carrying with it the hope of Steelbone's salvation. His heart ached with a bittersweet blend of sorrow and fierce pride. The cost was high, but the mission was no longer a solitary burden. It was a shared legacy forged in sacrifice. As the water closed over him, muffling the distant echoes of battle, Kael found solace in the knowledge that his crew would live on, bound not only by blood and loss, but by the unbreakable ties of found family. The toxic sea was vast and cruel, but within its endless expanse, the scattered survivors of Steelbone would carry forward the flickering flame of hope. and somewhere, beneath the waves, a captain's spirit endured, steadfast and unyielding. The vessel's engines hummed steadily as Myra leaned against the control panel, her breath still uneven from the harrowing escape. "He didn't have to do that," she murmured, voice thick with emotion. Joran, adjusting his cracked glasses, gave a small nod. "He chose to be the anchor so we could sail free." Lena joined them, her satchel of herbs momentarily forgotten. "We owe him everything. We have to make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain." Grav, scarred and silent, stared out into the toxic horizon. "Steelbone's fate rests with us now. We carry the burden and the promise." Myra's eyes hardened with renewed resolve. "Then we fight. For Kael, for Steelbone." The sea stretched endlessly before them, a vast expanse of danger and uncertainty. But within the hearts of the crew, a fierce, bittersweet determination burned bright, a beacon against the darkness. Their voyage was far from over. As the chapter closes, the story lingers on the delicate balance between sacrifice and survival, leadership and trust, loss and hope, threads that will weave through the remaining journey of Steelbone's weary but unbroken crew. The metallic groans and creaking timbers of Steelbone's floating hull were drowned beneath the rising buzz of distant mechanical whirs, a sound that sent an immediate hush through Kael's crew. They had faced mechanical beasts before, but what approached now was different, faster, smarter, and more coordinated. Kael stood on the deck of their vessel, his weathered hands gripping the rusted railing as sharp eyes scanned the shifting mist. The first beast emerged like a spectre from the toxic haze, its joints grinding with unnatural precision, eyes glowing a malevolent red. It was followed swiftly by others, their forms sleek but deadly, gleaming metal limbs scraping the scrap beneath their feet. The acrid scent of burnt oil and heated metal filled the air, mingling with the ever-present stench of decay that clung to the sea. "Get to positions," Kael barked, his voice cutting through the rising panic. He moved with practiced efficiency, signaling Myra to lead the scouts in flanking maneuvers, while Grav readied heavy weapons rigged from scavenged parts. Lena moved among the crew, her satchel of herbs and medical supplies at the ready, eyes wide with concern but steady. Myra's fiery hair was a blur as she darted between twisted piles of scrap, her combat instincts honed by years of fighting alongside Kael. She struck without hesitation, disabling a beast's mechanical leg with a swift kick, sparks erupting from the fractured joint. Tess, Myra's protege, relayed signals with quick gestures and sharp calls, her youthful agility allowing her to navigate the chaos with ease. Joran crouched nearby, eyes scanning the beast's movements and recording patterns. "Their joints are more advanced," he muttered, "hydraulic systems integrated with reactive servos. We'll need to target the servo hubs to slow them down." Grav growled in agreement, hefting a heavy, makeshift hammer. "Leave that to me." The battle unfolded in a brutal dance of metal and flesh. Claws scraped, engines hissed, and the clang of improvised weapons echoed over the toxic sea's endless expanse. Kael's leadership was steady, his commands precise despite the chaos. Yet beneath his calm exterior, a storm of worry brewed. Every mechanical beast they defeated seemed to hint at a larger, more terrifying force at play, a force that was learning, adapting. Lena's hands were a blur, staunching bleeding wounds and murmuring words of comfort to the injured. Her presence was a balm to the frayed nerves of the crew, a reminder of the fragile humanity they fought to preserve. "Hold on," she urged one young scavenger, "we'll get through this, together." As the last of the mechanical beasts collapsed with a final, shuddering groan, the crew gathered, breaths ragged and bodies aching. The setting sun painted the toxic sea in shades of blood red and orange, a cruelly beautiful backdrop to their narrow victory. Kael wiped a smear of grease from his brow, eyes never leaving the horizon. "This was just a warning," he said quietly. "They're coming for us, harder and smarter. We need to be ready." Myra stepped beside him, her green eyes fierce but thoughtful. "Then we fight smarter too. No more reckless charges. We work as one." Joran nodded, adjusting his cracked glasses. "I'll keep studying their tech. There has to be a way to turn their own design against them." Grav cracked his knuckles, a grim smile breaking through his scarred face. "Let them come, we'll be waiting." Lena's voice was soft but resolute. "And we'll heal what's broken in our bodies and in our hearts." Their found family, battered but unbroken, stood united on the deck of their fragile vessel, the endless toxic sea stretching before them like a challenge. The mechanical menace was no longer just a threat. It was a call to arms, a crucible that would test their courage, their bonds, and their will to survive. As night fell, the eerie glow of distant mechanical eyes flickered through the fog, a reminder that the battle was far from over. But in that moment, amid the ruins and rust, hope kindled anew, fierce, determined, and unyielding. "Rest now," Kael said, voice low but carrying weight. "Tomorrow we fight again." And with that, the crew braced themselves for the trials ahead, ready to face the heart of the mechanical storm. The night deepened, wrapping Steelbone in a blanket of uneasy silence. Yet beneath the surface, the city's heartbeat thrummed with the promise of survival and the unbreakable ties of found family. Somewhere in the toxic sea, the warden's mechanical beasts stirred, waiting for the next move. But Kael and his crew had learned one thing. Survival was not just about strength, but about unity, trust, and the fierce will to endure against all odds. The mechanical menace was coming, and Steelbone would not fall without a fight. The horizon shimmered faintly, hinting at dangers yet unseen. The question lingered like the fading light. How long could they hold the line before the sea itself claimed them? The voyage was far from over. Joran sat hunched over a battered workbench, his slender fingers tracing the faded lines of an ancient schematic sprawled across the table. The dim flicker of a sputtering lantern cast long shadows across the cramped room, illuminating the contours of the fragile paper and the fine dust that clung to every surface. His cracked glasses caught the faint glow of a pulsating diagram embedded within the drawing, an intricate lattice of gears, conduits, and glowing nodes that seemed almost alive. Kael leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, eyes narrowed but attentive. Lena sat nearby, her sun-kissed skin illuminated softly by the lantern's light, fingers absently twining a strand of her hair as she watched Joran work. The silence between them was thick with anticipation, each heartbeat a drumbeat of hope and fear. This changes everything," Joran finally breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. He lifted his gaze, eyes shining with the weight of revelation. "The artifact isn't just a source of power. It's a regulator, a key to the balance of the toxic sea itself." Kael's brows furrowed deeply. "Balance? What do you mean?" Joran tapped a section of the schematic, and with a gentle push, a holographic projection shimmered to life above the table. The image flickered, coalescing into a three-dimensional map of the sea's currents, intertwined with mechanical nodes and energy flows. The artifact was designed to control the delicate equilibrium between the sea's toxicity and the life it supports. It manages the mechanical beasts, the circulation of toxins, even the currents that keep Steelbone afloat. Without it, the sea will spiral into chaos. Lena's voice was soft but steady. So the Warden's obsession with it isn't just about power. It's about control over life and death in this world. Joran nodded, his fingers hovering over another part of the projection. Suddenly, the image shifted, revealing a figure, a tall, imposing man clad in patchwork armor, his glowing red lenses piercing the holographic gloom. The Warden's visage flickered, morphing between a stern guardian and a tormented tyrant. He was once the sea's protector, Joran explained, voice heavy with melancholy. A guardian who kept the balance for generations. But after losing everything to the very chaos he sought to contain, his faith in humanity shattered. His heart twisted by grief and paranoia. Kael's jaw clenched. So he became what we fight against. Exactly, Joran said. The artifact holds the power to restore the sea's balance, but in the wrong hands, it could bring ruin to Steelbone and everything we fight to protect. A heavy silence settled over the room as the weight of this knowledge sank in. Outside, the toxic sea churned relentlessly, waves of acidic green foam crashing against the city's patchwork hulls. The distant roar of mechanical beasts echoed faintly through the night, a haunting reminder of the stakes ahead. Lena reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Kael's arm. We have to succeed. For Steelbone, for everyone we care about. Kael looked down at her hand, then back at Joran's glowing schematics. Then we move forward. But armed with this truth, we can't afford mistakes. The Warden won't stop until he has the artifact. Neither can we. Joran's lips pressed into a thin line. We need to understand everything about the artifact, its mechanisms, vulnerabilities, and how to harness its power safely. It's the only way to protect Steelbone and prevent the Warden from plunging the sea into darkness. As the lantern's light flickered once more, the three of them bent over the ancient schematics, minds racing to piece together a fragile hope in the heart of a relentless storm. The secrets of the artifact had been unveiled, but the true test was still to come. Beyond the walls of their sanctuary, the endless toxic sea awaited, its waves whispering promises of peril and salvation alike. The balance of life and death, hope and despair, rested in their hands and in the heart of the artifact, now pulsing softly beneath their fingertips. The voyage into the depths of truth had only just begun, and with it, the fate of Steelbone hung ever more precariously in the balance. The endless, poisonous sea, a swirling canvas of rust and decay, stretched beyond the horizon, swallowing the sun's weak glow and leaving the city bathed in a sickly yellow haze. In the heart of this precarious sanctuary, the air was thick with the acrid smoke of burning oil and the sharp attempts of rusted metal corroding, faster than repairs could be made. Kael stood on the central engine platform, his lean frame silhouetted against the faltering machinery that was the city's beating heart. The dull roar of the engines was faltering, punctuated by unsettling groans and clanks that set his teeth on edge. His dark hair, streaked with premature grey, whipped in the bitter wind that sliced through the city's patchwork hulls. His sharp eyes scanned the sprawling tangle of pipes, wires, and scrap assembled into something that defied collapse for now. The engines are failing faster than we predicted. Grav's gruff voice broke the tense silence. The heavy weapons specialist and engineer was beside Kael, wiping sweat and grime from his scarred face. We're losing pressure in the main conduits. If we don't stabilize them soon, the whole city could go dark. Kael's jaw tightened. Then we don't have time to waste. Every moment we delay, the sea tightens its grip. Around them, the city creaked and shifted, metal plates buckling under the relentless assault of corrosive storms. The toxic sea hissed and spat at the city's edges, and somewhere far below, mechanical beasts prowled, their glowing red eyes watching, waiting. Inside the infirmary, Lena moved with steady purpose, her sun-kissed skin glowing softly beneath the dim glow of flickering lamps. The cramped rooms smelled of herbs and antiseptics, a fragile sanctuary amid the chaos. She tended a young crew member, pale and trembling from poisoning after a recent storm. "You're going to be all right," Lena whispered, her voice a soothing balm against the harshness outside. Her hands, gentle yet sure, worked swiftly to stem the toxins coursing through the boy's veins. "We'll get through this. We always do." The toll of the city's decline was written in every injury, every sickness that passed through her hands. Yet Lena's fierce optimism shone bright, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. Meanwhile, in the engine room, Mira and Grav worked side by side, their faces grim under the harsh light of sparking welding torches. The bitter chill of the toxic sea seeped through cracks, clashing with the heat of their work. "If we lose that conduit, half the city's power shuts down," Grav muttered, sweat beating on his brow. Myra's fiery red hair was damp with grime, her piercing green eyes locked on the tangled mess of wires. "Then we fix it. No excuses. We don't leave Steelbone to rot here." Their banter was tight, underscored by fear and fierce loyalty. The weight of their shared responsibility pressed heavy on their shoulders. Elsewhere, in the cramped quarters of the crew, Joran sat hunched over ancient schematics, the lines and symbols, a language he had devoted himself to deciphering. His cracked glasses reflected the flickering light of a dying lamp as he traced the faint outlines of an artifact rumored to hold the key to Steelbone's salvation. "If this is right," Joran murmured, "then the artifact isn't just a myth. It's a power source, maybe even capable of restoring balance to these waters." The quiet hope in his voice was a stark contrast to the storm of despair gathering beyond the city's fragile hull. The worsening condition of Steelbone was more than a backdrop. It was a living, breathing menace that tightened the noose around the crew's mission. Every faltering engine, every toxic storm, every creak and groan was a reminder that time was not on their side. Kael's gaze hardened. "We leave at first light. We cannot wait for the city to die around us." Mira stepped forward, her voice low but fierce. "And if we don't make it back, then Steelbone sinks," Kael replied, but not without a fight. The crew gathered around, each face etched with exhaustion, fear, and a stubborn spark of defiance. They were a found family forged in hardship, bound by a shared resolve to survive against all odds. The toxic winds howled as night fell over Steelbone, carrying with them the distant howls of mechanical beasts prowling the outskirts. The city trembled, but its heart still beat, and so did theirs. As the first pale light of dawn crept over the horizon, the crew readied themselves to sail into the unknown, the weight of their city's fate heavy on their shoulders. The voyage promised danger, sacrifice, and the faintest glimmer of hope. Kael took one last look at Steelbone, the city adrift but unbroken. "For Steelbone," he whispered, and with that, they stepped into the uncertain future, where survival was the only certainty. The engines groaned beneath them, a symphony of metal and fire that resonated through the bones of the city. The toxic sea stretched endlessly, a grim mirror reflecting their desperation. Yet, in that twilight between ruin and hope, the crew of Steelbone found their purpose renewed, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The journey to salvation had become a race against time itself, and failure was a luxury none could afford. Inside the cramped quarters and out on the deck, the hum of the failing engines was replaced for once by the gentle crackle of fire. It was an odd kind of warmth, this fire built from salvaged scraps and flammable bits of old tech. But it was enough to gather the crew together, to form a circle of closeness amid the endless expanse of toxic water. Kael sat close to the blaze, the flickering light dancing over the sharp angles of his weathered face. His usual stoicism softened as he glanced around at the faces illuminated by the firelight mirror. Restless and fiery, Jorin with his thoughtful gaze, Lena's serene presence, Grav's steady bulk, and young Tess, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and determination. For a long moment, no one spoke. The distant roar of the toxic sea was a constant reminder of the dangers waiting just beyond their fragile refuge. Yet here, in this circle of light, those threats felt distant. Mira broke the silence with a teasing nudge toward Jorin. Come on, bookworm, you owe us a story. Something to keep the night alive, yeah. Jorin adjusted his cracked glasses, cheeks flushing slightly under the warmth of the fire and the eyes upon him. Well, he began, voice soft but steady. There's an old legend about the machines that once ruled these waters, giants of metal and steam, born from human hands but far beyond human control. They say the artifact we seek is tied to their power, a key to restoring balance. The group leaned in, captivated by the blend of mystery and melancholy woven into Jorin's tale. Myra's eyes gleamed with renewed purpose as she exchanged a glance with Kael, who nodded slowly, his mind already turning over the implications. After the story, Kael found himself compelled to share a piece of his own past, a rarity for the guarded captain. I lost my family to the storms, he said quietly, voice rough with memory. Those storms were worse than anything this sea can throw at us. I promised then, in the silence after the worst had passed, that I'd protect this city, this crew. We're all that's left. The crew listened in silence, the weight of Kael's words settling over them like a mantle. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from their leader, and it deepened the unspoken bonds that tied them together. Lena moved gently among them, her hands deft as she tended to a scrape on Tessa's arm and offered cups of bitter herbal tea brewed from the last of Steelbone's garden herbs. Her voice was soft and steady, a balm for both body and spirit. We've all got wounds, she said, but together we heal. Grav chuckled, the sound rough but affectionate. Only you could make poison water taste like hope, he teased, earning a smile from Lena and a lightening of the mood. As the fire burned lower, the crew shared thoughts of home, of fears, and of dreams. In the face of relentless adversity, these moments of connection were their true salvation, knitting a found family out of lost souls. The toxic sea might rage beyond their fragile walls, but here, under the scant stars and the flickering firelight, hope was alive. Yet, as the night deepened and the fire sputtered, an unspoken question lingered in the air. How long could this fragile peace last before the sea demanded its due once more? The crew looked toward the horizon, each silently steeling themselves for the trials that awaited. Bound tighter than ever by the stories, the pain, and the fierce, bittersweet determination to survive. And so, with hearts heavier yet stronger, they settled into the night, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also the strength of the bonds forged on this night, bonds that might just be the key to Steelbone's salvation. The sea whispered its endless song, but within the circle of firelight, the crew's voices rose in quiet defiance, a testament to the enduring power of found family amid desolation. As the first light of dawn threatened the horizon, Kael's gaze hardened with resolve. The voyage was far from over, and the hardest trials yet awaited. But for now, they had each other, and that was enough to face the coming storm. The fire died down to embers, but the warmth it left behind would linger in their hearts as they prepared to sail deeper into the unknown. The night's stories, laughter, and shared hopes were not just fleeting comfort. They were the steel in their bones, the unbreakable core of Steelbone's legacy, and they would need every ounce of it.